Hello YouTube, and welcome to my video on 5 tips on how to get a job in Civvy Street after leaving the military. So this video is a bit different to most of the other videos you'll see on my channel, which are more about repairing cars, bikes and mechanical things, so this might be one my main subscribers probably want to skip. But I thought I'd make it because I've been giving it a bit of thought recently. I've been out of the army about 7 years now, and I've had a few civilian jobs since, both self-employed and working for other companies. And I think I've built up a bit of experience now to hopefully help some others out of you out there that may be struggling. You may be about to leave the military in about a year's time. You might have left a few years ago and haven't quite found your way yet, or you might just want some general thoughts and advice on ways to tailor your civilian career to succeed more and have a better life. Despite the clickbaity title, these 5 tips are more kind of thinking points. They're not quick wins. It's not like this is one amazing secret employers won't tell you about and they'll be falling over themselves to give you a job. No, it's more about 5 things that I think you want to get into your mindset, which will put you in a better place to apply for jobs and build up a successful career after leaving the military. Number 1. Who do you actually want to be in Civvy Street? I think the first thing that you need to get your head around before you even start thinking about applying for jobs after leaving the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, whatever, is what kind of person do you want to be after you leave the military? Now, it sounds like a bit of a stupid thing. Surely you want to be the person that you are naturally. But depending on who you are, your experience, how long you've served for, how long you joined, did you have an experience before you joined the military, you might actually want to think about who you are, how you act, and how you want to portray yourself in a civilian job. Now, the reason I've decided to make this my number 1 point is I have noticed that there's a lot of guys, and I've met quite a few of them, that leave the army or whatever branch of service and they just can't let go. They want to act and think like they're still in. They even dress like they're still in. They kind of wear a civilian version of a military uniform. You've probably all seen them. Polo shirt, wrist full of military charity armbands, dressed as if they want people to know that they were once in the army. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it can be a bit strange and a bit off-putting to civilian employers. There's a lot of civilian employers out there who welcome the military and embrace them and want to recruit them. But I've noticed a lot of guys that are a bit too full on. It's like they can't let go. It's like they're scared to be a civilian. It's like they want people desperately to say, "Oh, were you in the army? Were you in the army? Oh, what did you do? What did you do?" And I think personally that's a bit too much. Now, this is something that's probably a bit harder for you guys who have been in quite a long time, who have served probably a full career, probably risen to quite a high senior rank, staff sergeant, colour sergeant, warrant officer, even higher than that, late entry officer, or even officers who've been in for quite a long time as well. You might have joined up at quite a young age, 17 or whatever. You might have known nothing else in life apart from military service. And ironically, although you've probably given the most to your country and you've probably worked the longest and hardest, it's probably also going to be the most difficult for you guys to transition smoothly into a civilian career, because you are kind of so used to that way of thinking and acting and being that you don't really know any other way of doing things. And it might be quite jarring when you go into a civilian job where things are different and you probably want to impose your military persona and your military ways of doing things on them because you think that's how things should be done, that's professional. They'll be impressed by that and that's what they want to see. But if you go in a bit too full on, it might well scare civilian employers off. So that's the first decision you need to make. Do you want to go into Civvy Street still retaining that strong sense of the military that you've grown up with and lived with, And that's fine if you do. You probably want to, in that case, want to work in security or want to work for civilian employers that are effectively civilian versions of the military. There's plenty of them out there, and there's plenty of companies doing that sort of work. They employ almost exclusively ex-military people, whether it's ex-infantry guys who go into security, signals people who go into defence companies and that sort of thing. You can probably transition into those sort of businesses without really changing yourself too much, because you'll be working with other people who've come from exactly the same situation as you. But if you want to draw a line under your military career and move on and start a new chapter of your life, completely different, completely let it all go, then you kind of want to think about that sort of stuff. I would suggest that you never drop that military background, that military way of thinking, but you need to frame it. I think being subtle and using kind of soft power is much more effective in getting a civilian career than going in a bit too full on and scaring people off. I'll probably come back to this a bit later. Number 2, looking after your base. Before you start really applying for those jobs and really trying to get a new career, I would recommend that you take a good hard look at your personal circumstances. Military life is a bit strange, and you probably don't really realise that until you've been out a while. It's kind of an odd way of existing, really. You start your basic training and you are scum, you are useless, you are hopeless, you are pathetic, you can't do anything. You're being shouted at and you're being beasted for weeks, months on end, maybe even years for some people. You are shit, you're crap, you can't do anything, you're not worth it. You see that tree on the horizon, you see the one past that, get there and back in 60 seconds or you'll be going again. Pays to be a winner, all that sort of stuff. I'm sure you remember it. And then suddenly, as soon as your training's finished, you're the same person. All you've really done is not quit and been able to cope with what the training's thrown at you. You've suddenly got a princess or a queen or a politician or a general standing in front of you on a podium while you're standing there with your rifle in your shoulder, telling you that you are incredible, you are the greatest thing on earth, you are a hero, you're wonderful. It's a bit weird psychologically, that, I think, and those ups and downs kind of continue through your military career. You might be on tour in Afghan or wherever the military is deployed, get with the rounds flying around, horrific things happening, and then suddenly a few weeks later you're at home in a supermarket where no one even knows where Afghan is or really gives a shit about it. Mental health in the military is not a new subject. Everybody knows about it, everybody knows the issues. It tends to focus quite a lot on people who've experienced severe trauma or have been around severe trauma, but even those of you who haven't, it's probably affected your mindset and thinking in certain ways, and if you're not careful, those sort of things can build up and maybe even continue in a civilian career as well, with the stresses of civilian life and family life. And I'm not saying you probably suffer from PTSD, but a lot of these things come together, can affect your mindset and your way of thinking in a negative way. So spend a bit of time thinking about that. How do I think? Is this a normal way of thinking? Do I have automatically negative thoughts? Am I a bit too extreme in my thinking? Am I full on committed to even the most mundane of tasks that don't really require that sort of commitment? I mean, the military thinking can be a great benefit to you in many aspects of life. Being professional, not quitting till the job's done, seeing everything through to the end, holding yourself to the highest standards. But if you think things in too much of an extreme manner, it can also be quite a negative thing. You need to balance these sort of things. And if you go into job hunting or career hunting with a slightly unsteady mindset, it's going to reflect in your work. It's going to reflect in how you write your CV, how you write your cover letters, how you speak to people on the phone. So even if it's subconsciously and you don't realise it yourself, I would pay attention to these sort of things. And if you need help addressing them, or if you need to speak to more people about addressing them, then I'd recommend that you do that. Also in this point, I'd like to cover your family and your friends. When you join the army, it's friends for life, isn't it? Brilliant. You'll be with this team, you'll live with them, you'll have fun with them, you'll get pissed with them, you'll be with them throughout your life and they'll support you. That might be the case. It also might not be the case. You might leave the army, people move on, you don't have any friends in your local area, and you might be quite alone. So I'd also recommend as this point, in order to have a healthy, active job hunting outlook, you really focus, and it might take a lot of work and a lot of reflection on strengthening those ties with any friends that you may have outside of the military, and also any family. It's no secret that a lot of people in the military go through multiple marriages, multiple divorces. Anything like that is going to cause internal conflict, which is going to make getting a job, making a career much more difficult. So you might need to eat some humble pie. You might have been away from home for most of your career for years, used to seeing your wife late in the evenings, weekends, being away for 6 months, 9 months, and she will have got used to that as well. So there might be quite a lot of conflict when you're now at home full time, almost a stranger in your own house, moved out of a military patch into a civilian flat or house. A lot of things are new, a lot of new bills to pay, a lot of new rules to follow. It can be disruptive. You need to be a strong team with the rest of your family, the rest of your friends, in order to fight through these problems. And if you're not, maybe try and look to building that sort of team to support you in civilian life. Number 3, fix the things you can change, forget the rest. I think job hunting is a bit like dating in many ways. I'm certainly not an expert on either subject, but I do think one of the things about dating is you should probably focus on the aspects of yourself, of your personality that you can address. There'll be some things you can fix, some things you can't. You can't do much about your horrendous personality, your stinking chat, or your fucking ugly face. But you can work on other aspects which will increase your appeal to the opposite sex. Things like your physical fitness, your knowledge of current events and pop culture, things like that. These are things that you can work on only by time and physical effort. They don't cost money. They don't require things that you can't get hold of. You can just get yourself down the gym. You can read the paper, check the news, build your knowledge. These are things that will make you appeal to a wider amount of the population, because more people are attracted to physically fit, interesting people that have something to say than are attracted to fat loafers who sit in their mother's basement and eat pies, scratching their balls all day. The same, I think, can be said for job hunting. And one of the areas which you can work to influence the most is your written work. Your CV, your cover letters, your LinkedIn messages to people, your approaches to contacts. The amount of written stuff I see out there, emails, CVs, that aren't very polished, got spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, badly written, is very high. And for some jobs this might not matter too much, but why shoot yourself in the foot? If I've got 2 job applicants in front of me, one's got a perfectly written CV, the other's got spelling and grammar mistakes, and apart from that they're identical, I'm going to go for the guy who's put the effort in and got it right. Now, I know for a lot of you guys out there, this might be a difficult subject. It might be something you're just not very good at naturally. In that case, get someone else to check it. Find someone to check it. You might have a friend who's good at that sort of thing. You shouldn't need to pay for this sort of service. These people that will offer you a CV writing for £20, £50, I don't think you really need that sort of stuff. There isn't a perfect way of writing a CV. And you can probably get general templates offline with a bit of research. What I'd do is I'd find someone in your social network who's good at this sort of thing and ask them to check it. Or failing that, check one of your military colleagues, or maybe your old OC or someone like that. If one of my soldiers came to me, even many years after leaving the army, and said, "Boss, hope you're well, I'm trying to apply for jobs, I'm not that good at writing CVs, would you mind having a read through and give me some recommendations?" I would definitely do that. I mean, the leadership motto is serve to lead, and I still believe in that. It's an easy thing for me to do. It is something I'm reasonably good at. So reading through a CV for half an hour and sending it back red pen to someone is not a particularly big deal to me, and it may really help someone on their job hunt. So one of the things you should do if you're not 100% certain your CV is perfect is get somebody else to check it, because reading it yourself you might not be able to see these problems. Number 4. Embrace soft military power. Now this point is a little in contradiction to my ramble for point number 1, where I said you might want to play down your full-on military personality because it might be a bit weird and a bit scary and put people off. In this point, I'm encouraging you to embrace the military side of your background, but use it as subtly as you can. There are a huge amount of employers out there who do have strong sympathies for the military. They might not show it at the outset, you might not even pick it up in the interview, but a lot of it is there and a lot of it can help you get a job. Of course, the opposite's true as well. There's a small minority of the population that is very anti the military and what we do, and they also occasionally are employers. But generally speaking, I would say that there are a lot more that believe positive things about ex-military people than negative. So you'll see a lot of military people on stuff like LinkedIn, Facebook, and even written on their CVs, and it reads like a campaign report. It's a bit full on for me. These tend to be the same sort of guys as I mentioned in point 1, who can't let go of being in the military, speak like they're still in the mess bar, share memes every 10 seconds of poppy fields and support the troops and blah blah blah. I'm not saying any of that's a bad thing. I mean, I support the troops as well, but a lot of it I think is a bit over the top, especially for putting on social media. But you can share the same information to people in a more subtle way. You can write your history, explaining how you've managed people, explaining how you've dealt with problems, how you've overcome obstacles, without overemphasising the military lingo. It's a bit difficult to be specific here as everyone's different. But what I think you want to do is make it fairly clear about your military background in your job applications. Any employer worth their salt will have read your CV and will have picked up things anyway. They'll probably prick up on keywords like perhaps op-heric, op-telic, whatever. I was a sergeant, I was a section commander, I was a warrant officer, whatever. And if they are sympathetic to the military, which they probably will be if they're going to invite you to an interview anyway, these sort of words will be bubbling away inside their mind, and they probably will be a bit curious. And then when you get the chance to have a face-to-face chat with them, which is all an interview really is, then you can try and read their body language, read how they talk to you, and see if they want you to emphasise that military side of your character a bit more. The reason I'm saying this is it was quite apparent to me in my first job interview after leaving the army. It was actually while I was still in the army, just about to leave. I had successfully passed a job application, and it was one of these jobs where you have to do, it's a bit like The Apprentice, a few different boards. You have to have a group session and argue your case. You have to fill out some, I don't know, intelligence tests or something. And then the last phase is just an interview. Me in the room with 2 of the managers of this company, and they're both interviewing me. Now, I felt the rest of the process had gone reasonably well. I think I'd tried to put a strong case in the group session, the board meeting. I'd probably done all right on the tests. I'm usually quite good at that sort of thing. But the interview, I was about halfway through, and it felt very average to me. I felt like I was answering the questions and I was giving answers that probably ticked boxes, but I was kind of getting a bit bored of the drone of my own voice. And whenever that's happened in the past, it's not resulted in a positive result. Even though in theory it should be good enough to get the job, whenever I've kind of felt bored in a situation, it hasn't gone well in the end. So I started trying to read the body language of the 2 guys interviewing me. One of them was very kind of sombre and dour, didn't give anything away, didn't even seem like he really wanted to be there. And the other guy seemed a little more cheerful. He nodded, he was a bit more responsive to me. And I did notice whenever I mentioned the word Afghanistan, he sort of pricked up and sort of smiled a bit. So what I started doing is in my examples to the questions he was answering, I started mentioning Afghanistan a little bit more than I otherwise would have, because I kind of detected that this guy was a bit interested and probably a bit of a fan. And he did seem to perk up, and the interview seemed to flow a little bit better. And to be honest, I started directing my attention more to this other guy, and not paying attention to the really wooden one as much. I ended up getting the job, in the end, I ended up being there about 5 years after all of that. So what I'm saying is, there's no hard and fast way to do anything. You can either be really full on military or really play it down. You can put it all in your CV or not. You need to be kind of intelligent though. You need to try and read people, read their responses, read their body language. If the examples you're giving and the way you're talking to people you can detect is sort of putting people off, maybe try and change tack a bit. Number 5, consider alternatives to conventional job hunting. This is my last point because I think the way that we look for jobs these days has fundamentally changed. My personal experience is that I have never got a job from searching for a job on a job board, finding one listed, clicking apply, filling out the cover letter, sending my CV and applying through the formal route. I've done this a lot of times and had no success. I personally don't think hardly any of these applications even reach the employer they're intended for, and even less of those are even read. There are exceptions to this rule, but I believe the way that people go for jobs these days is changing quite rapidly. I've got quite a lot of work through agencies. They can be very good. There are negative sides to them and things you need to be cautious of with them as well. I might cover that in a separate video if people are interested. But more and more people are getting jobs through kind of less conventional routes. Now, unless you're a complete no-hoper with nothing going for you at all, the chances are that you going for a job, you've got to get out of your mind that it's an intimidating situation, that the employers hold all the power and you're just a minion desperate for their help. You've got to get into the mindset that you are valuable. You are selling yourself to them, which is exactly what you're doing. They are paying you for your services. If you don't believe that you are a valuable product to them that they need to take care of and they need to pay their good money for because you are so valuable and so good, then you're always going to be on the back foot. I see occasionally these messages pop up on social media. I've applied for 600 jobs and never even got an interview. The job market's screwed. Blah, blah, blah. Firstly, I'm very sceptical of such posts. And secondly, if you're applying for hundreds, even dozens of jobs and not getting much of a response, your whole approach is wrong. Maybe your CV's terrible. Maybe your attitude is wrong. Maybe the way you come across is awful. But it's probably the way that you're job hunting is out of date. You need to form a personal connection with that employer who's got the power to give you the job. Not his secretary, not his recruitment consultant, not his PA. You need to somehow find out who that person is who is recruiting and make some sort of personal connection with them. It's not easy, but it is a lot easier than it used to be. A lot of this information can be found on places like LinkedIn. You can find out who department bosses are. Don't be scared to go a little bit senior in the company because they might then pass your details down onto their junior manager, who might be the recruiting manager. And the chances are, if a junior manager gets something from his boss and says, here, you might want to take a look at this guy, that junior manager is going to pay attention to you because his boss has effectively told him to. And all you might have done is drop the boss a message and say, hi Bob, I found your company, I've seen it's very interesting, I'm very interested in banana packaging or whatever the company does. I've also seen that you're recruiting for a storeman. Well, I've actually done this for 10 years in the army. If you'd like to have more of a chat, here's my details. You don't need to be overly formal. You don't need to request an interview. You don't need to say, here's my job application. You might just want to chat. You might just want to ask them if you can have a look around their factory or their office. You might say, oh, I live around the corner. Do you mind if I have 10 minutes of your time to have a chat and a look around? The chances are that chat will turn into a lot more. And also it'll make it easier for you because you'll be more at ease, they'll be more at ease. You don't need to get all into negotiations and critiquing each other because it's just a friendly visit. People visit companies all the time. Suppliers visit clients, clients visit suppliers, marketing people visit companies. You're no different for that. You're a valuable asset and you just want to have a look around, get to know more about that company and possibly build some connections with that company. And then when you've got that bond, it will probably grow into something further. The other successful way I've mentioned of getting a job or career is through recruitment agencies. This can be very hit and miss. You might submit your details to many of them. A lot of them will call you up and say, yeah, that's brilliant, you're exactly what we're looking for, we've got tons of jobs, and then you'll never hear from them again. And then quite often one will ring up out of the blue who you've never heard of, you've never even sent your details to, and they might have a job waiting for you, which you can step into in the next week. It is a bit of a minefield. A lot of them only want to speak to you because they want to know what your previous role was, so they can then ring your previous boss up and recruit someone for him instead. But it's just kind of, you've got to take the rough with the smooth in job hunting. A lot of them will help you, a lot of them just want information and data from you. You have to kind of judge how to deal with each one as it goes. But if in doubt, adopt a positive approach, because you never know, something could come from it. So this has been a bit of a ramble, a bit of a mind dump. It's been a video I've been wanting to make for a while, because I know a lot of people do struggle with this sort of thing. I might make more if it's been of interest. If you have any opinions or comments on this, drop them in the comments box below, and hit that like and subscribe if you want to see more of this sort of thing. Anyway, thanks for watching, good luck with your careers, and see you next time.